Do you want to wake up feeling like you're stepping into who you're meant to be, into the best possible version of you? What if I told you that the key to your best life, health, and happiness are all around you? You just have to find what works for you. I'm Hope Pedraza, and I believe that there isn't just one way to live a healthy and meaningful life, and that all you need is a little inspiration to make changes that last from the inside out. Each week, I'll be sharing tangible tips and inspirational interviews to help you on your journey. These are the steps to take to improve your life and live with purpose. This is Hopeful and Wholesome. Hey y'all, welcome back to Hopeful and Wholesome. I am hopping on this solo episode today to talk about all things cholesterol. And this is a timely episode because this is one of the more common questions that I get asked just in terms of general wellness questions, like physical wellness questions. And it's actually been coming up a lot lately with friends and family and clients' family members, like my clients asking for their family members. So I feel like this is a really important topic. And I think it's one of those kind of like the salt conversation and kind of like the toxin conversation. Like, I just feel like it's not talked about enough. And similar to the sodium salt conversation, there's a lot of misinformation, misunderstanding, just a lot of things that are not explained correctly in in the conventional world that I really want to clear up and just give you the facts. And there's a lot. I'll post some link to some studies because I want to include that today because I don't want you to think the stuff that I'm talking about is just hearsay or like it's just, repeating things that other people are saying. There are actual studies on this. And there are actually a lot of studies on this, but for some reason, whatever the reason may be, the information still isn't getting across to a lot of physicians because I mean, even and I'll tell you this as a personal story. Like my husband, this is probably I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, maybe longer than that, is at least 5 years ago, maybe more. He had high cholesterol, when he went to get, like, his annual physical, and the doctor basically was just like, "Okay, well, let's talk about statins," and my husband's like, "Well, hold on a second, like, you're not gonna give me a chance to try to get it under control?" And so he gives him this pamphlet of papers about diet, and it's like, "Don't eat fat. Don't eat cholesterol." It's like all these really outdated bits of information on this thing he sent home. And I looked at my husband, I'm like, this is garbage. Like, this is complete garbage. And I'm not saying all doctors do this because I'm sure there are doctors who are very well informed who are not still telling their patients that, but this doctor was not. And so I told him, I was like, no, I know how to get it down. So we did a combination of some supplementation, some dietary changes, things, and I'll talk about that at the end of my little chat here. And sure enough, it got down, and he's never had an issue with it since. So, point is, there's still a lot of really even though we have these studies that are showing us things that are contrary to what we were told in the 80s and 90s. And, it goes along with the whole low fat fad that we had in the 90s, right? When everything was low fat, this and low fat that. And it went along with it. And like eggs are bad. Remember that thing that they were talking about how terrible eggs were for you and cholesterol and like, don't eat eggs because it's going to mess up your cholesterol. Yeah, that wasn't true. So I want to clear up some things today. So I want to kind of start from the basics here. First of all, why is cholesterol demonized so much? Now, cholesterol, just like fat, just like sodium, right? Those things that there's just so much misunderstanding around, is again one of those like weaponized things over the last few decades. And I mean, honestly, I want to say it probably started back in the 80s, but it was really a heavy hitter in the 90s with the whole low fat diet thing. And I mean, it was responsible for demonizing entire categories of food like fat and eggs, right? Eggs were demonized for a long time. It's been blamed for pretty much all cases of heart disease in the past 20 years. And you probably know that there are a lot of myths that portray fat cholesterol as some of the worst foods you can eat. Some people will still swear by that. And that, cholesterol doesn't just destroy your health, but it's the cause of heart disease. And just take these cholesterol lowering drugs, and this is all right. This is what we hear. So let's just talk about what is cholesterol, because that's the facts of how how we've demonized cholesterol along with other things that were just really misunderstood. So let's talk about what cholesterol is. All right, starting just kind of from the basics. So, depending on your diet, up to 80%, even though some sources say up to 90% of your cholesterol is produced inside your own body rather than absorbed from food sources. So, you see, knowing that fact alone changes things that we believe about cholesterol, right? So, that's 80 to 90% of the cholesterol, of your cholesterol, is produced inside your body, right? Now, I'm not saying that food can't contribute to increased blood cholesterol levels. So, yes, your eating habits can increase this, but it's not how we think, right? I'm going to explain that in a second. So, what is cholesterol? Cholesterol is this soft, waxy substance that's found in your bloodstream. It's found in every single cell in your body. It helps produce cell membranes, hormones, vitamin D, bile acids, all of these things that help digest fat. It also helps in the formation of your memories and is vital for your neurological function. So you could see cholesterol is actually really important, and there is such a thing as too little cholesterol. So we need cholesterol, which is why 80 to 90% of it is produced inside your own body. Okay. Now your liver produces this. So like this the 75, some sources say, I will say 75 to 90, depends what source you look at, but it's the majority of it, right? So that 75 to 90% is your liver's producing regardless of what you're eating, right? So there's the HDL, right? You hear HDL and LDL when you go get your cholesterol checked, right? The HDL, which is high density lipoprotein, this is a cholesterol carrying protein, right? It's like the good cholesterol, what they quote, the quote unquote good cholesterol, right? It helps keep cholesterol away from your arteries, removes any excess plaque in your arteries, and this helps prevent heart disease. So this one you want higher, right? Then there's the LDL. This is the low density lipoprotein. This is a cholesterol or a protein carrier. So it's a carrier protein known as what we call the quote unquote bad cholesterol, right? Now, the LDL, the size is very important because it's because of the size, because it's smaller. The smaller it is, the worse it is, right? So when we're chronically inflamed, we tend to reduce the size of these molecules and it circulates in the blood because it's also related to our immunity. And depending on the degree of inflammation of your arteries, caused mostly, which I'm going to get to this, mostly caused by excess sugar in the blood, high blood sugar, hello, it can accumulate in them, right? It can accumulate there, forming plaque that makes them narrow, less flexible, right? You've probably heard of the term atherosclerosis that your doctor might use. This is like the hardening of your arteries. And if there's a coagulation in these, and then that's what causes a heart attack, right? Because the blood's not flowing through. So that's the LDL. That's the bad stuff that we want it to be lower. Then they also measure your triglycerides. This is the dangerous fat. And honestly, when I'm telling my clients, like looking at their labs, the triglycerides is where I'm going to look first because this is the dangerous stuff. This is the stuff that's linked to heart disease and diabetes. And triglyceride levels are increased because of too much sugar, too much starch, too many carbohydrates, too much, right? All of that is going to increase that. So, that's kind of the gist of what cholesterol is. So, cholesterol helps you build healthy cell membranes, right? It provides the backbone for our hormones in our body like cortisol, progesterone, estrogen, and testosterone. So, like I said, you need it, like you actually need cholesterol. And it controls inflammation resulting from injury or irritation in the body's tissues. That's what I want to hone in on, right? So, think about this. Just listen to what I'm saying. Cholesterol serves to control inflammation resulting from injury or irritation to the bodily tissues. That's what I just said. It helps control inflammation. So keep that fact in mind, right? Keep that in mind, what I just said. Now, the current view, right? The kind of general consensus in the medical world, for the most part, again, I'm not saying everybody, because there are plenty of doctors who know that there's outdated information going around. The current view, and I would say, and I don't even want to put it on doctors. I think just like society in general, this is what, because people haven't been informed correctly, believes that cholesterol causes plaque in the arteries. But if we think about this, consider that cholesterol is a means to keep inflammation under control, because that's what I just said. We can find a different explanation, right? This leads us to the actual fact around cholesterol. Inflammation basically results from a lack of antioxidant rich foods, too much chemical exposure, toxic exposure, imbalances in cortisol, imbalances in insulin, right? I just said a second ago that the LDL is, right, it's going to raise when you have too much blood in your sugar, or your sugar, not blood in your sugar in your blood, too much blood sugar, your high blood sugar. That's what I'm trying to say. All of this, right? Insulin and glucose, like all of these, the diabetes thing, pre-diabetic, insulin resistance, all of that is going to lead to inflammation, right? So as inflammation causes harm to your wall, the walls of your arteries, our body attempts to kind of patch it up, right? Because cholesterol is trying to control the inflammatory response. So the inflammation, and if you think about it in the same way I've explained leaky gut before. If you've heard me explain leaky gut, right? It's these inflammation is causing these little perforations in your gut lining, right? And it's causing like little things to leak out, like undigested proteins out. The same thing is happening to your artery walls, but from inflammation, and the cholesterol is trying to patch up those holes. It's like, well, hold on, there's holes here. Let me patch them up, right? That's what's happening. So our liver is going to produce more cholesterol so that it can form this band-aid on these little holes in your artery walls, right? So cholesterol in and of itself is not the problem. Do you see what I'm saying? The damage is from the inflammation. It's not the cholesterol. Cholesterol is not the problem. High cholesterol is because of this inflammation. Right now, granted, let me say this, there can be underlying imbalances that can cause high cholesterol. And especially like if there's, which I just said that, high cortisol, because that's a huge high cortisol, high blood sugar, those are two really huge inflammation sources of inflammation in the body. And those two things alone can cause just a chain reaction of inflammatory responses. So that alone in and of itself is going to cause your body to, your liver to push up more and more cholesterol because it's causing damage to your arterial walls, the walls of your arteries. So do you see what I'm saying? I'm hoping this is making sense for you. So your total cholesterol level is not an accurate indicator of your risk for developing heart disease, even though that's what the doctor's going to tell you. So, what should you be looking at? I think you should be looking at inflammation, right? Markers like C reactive protein, that's a really good marker of inflammation, right? These are the kind of things. Your cholesterol, really, y'all, cholesterol is really your friend. It's not your enemy. Cholesterol is trying to control this inflammatory response because you've got inflammation going on. It's like, oh, there's holes there, right? So it's trying to fix things. Cholesterol is not the problem. And in so many Western countries, I mean, I think it's just probably the Western world in general, the idea that cholesterol is bad is just been ingrained in society, like cholesterol from food, I'm saying. If your cholesterol levels are increasing, it is at least in part, I would say the majority is because of inflammation, right? And I have so many clients and even friends who come to me talking to me about like, oh, I've never had a cholesterol before. I cannot tell you how many times I've had people tell me that before. Clients, friends, family members, never had a cholesterol before, and go to their doctor and their cholesterol is elevated. And even I will say this too, and this is important to note, even people who on the outside are healthy people, they're eating all the right things, they're doing all the right things, but there's a source of inflammation. There's something going on in their body. Now, I will say this too, that yes, there are genetic factors at play that can make it harder for you to keep your cholesterol down, but I am always in the school of thought that that's never an excuse to just like let it go, right? Same thing with diabetes or anything else. Like, yeah, I mean, you can have a genetic propensity to those kind of things, but I think that your environment can play a huge role in controlling how those genes are expressing themselves. So that being said, inflammation is, I'm talking about your immune system's response to an injury or an infection, right? So if you think about if you scrape your knee or you sprain your ankle or whatever, your immune system is going to unleash an army of white blood cells to go and protect the area, try to fix up what's wrong, right? You're going to see redness, you might see swelling. That is inflammation, right? That is localized acute inflammation, okay? Infections like the flu or pneumonia, right? Uh, any kind of virus, it's a similar response. It's the response is to eliminate a pathogen, right? Your body's trying to get rid of it. So it has this inflammatory response. You got mucus, you got snot running down your face, your eyes are water, like all these things happen. It's an inflammatory response to try to get rid of the pathogen. Chronic inflammation is when it's lingering over a long period of time, right? That's when it becomes harmful. Acute inflammation, when you have you break something, you hurt something, you scratch something, you have some sort of virus or something, that's a good that the inflammatory response is a good thing because that's what's going to help get rid of it and heal your body, right? But it's when it's chronic that it becomes a problem. So, constantly being exposed to toxins, chronic high cortisol, chronic high blood sugar, right? Chronic stress is going to cause chronic inflammation, right? All of these things are contributing to chronic inflammation. It's going to be caused from things like a sedentary lifestyle, smoking, stress, eating trans fats. And I will say, I'm not going to, and I'll talk about the diet part in a second. I'm not going to say all fat is good because we all know it's not. So, trans fats, it's, in processed foods, that's not the good kind of fat. Um, Toxins from your environment, lack of sleep or just poor sleep, toxic relationships, toxic thoughts, trauma, nutritional deficiencies, right? All of these things are causing chronic inflammation when we don't address them at the source. So it's this inflammation that is driving up our cholesterol, period, right? It's not your eggs. It's not your grass-fed beef that you're eating. Now, granted, yes, should you watch your saturated fat? Yes. But that in and of itself is not going to cause high cholesterol, right? That's not where it's happening. That's not why it's happening. It's from inflammation. So I would say, honestly, I would say the first thing to look at, I'm going to talk about an action plan in a second, but the first thing to look at, in my opinion, is going to be your cortisol and your blood sugar, right? Do you have chronic high cortisol? Do you have chronic high blood sugar? Those are two huge stressors on the body. Addressing those two things alone. And let me say this too. I want to paraphrase or rephrase what I just said, not paraphrase, but rephrase what I just said. The high blood sugar is one thing, but it's really and truly what it is unstable blood sugar. So too high blood sugar and too low blood sugar, both of those are a stress on the body. So it's really when your blood sugar is unstable. Now, yes, I will say I really think that high blood sugar is going to be a little bit more of a stressor just because, like I mentioned before, about how it affects your LDL number. So it has a different response in the body. But either way, high blood sugar, low blood sugar, both of these are huge stressors on the body. So when your blood sugar is like wah, 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 all over the place, that is a huge stressor on the body. So I want to say this before I talk about what the treatment plan looks like what your path to healing looks like. I want to talk about statin drugs because this is, and like I mentioned with the instance with my husband, that was the first thing the doctor said. And my husband was like, hold on a second. I'm not trying to get on medication right now. So when you get on a statin drugs make it impossible for your body to produce CoQ10, coenzyme Q10, which is really beneficial to heart health and essential for muscle function. And it's key to function of your mitochondria in your cell, which are the little energy guys in your cells, right? Responsible for energy production in your cells. So if anyone if your parents, your grandparents, whoever that is on a statin, for the love of God, tell them to take CoQ10. And like I said, there's a lot of people that aren't advised of this. I was telling a family member or friend, I was telling somebody about it oh no, I was telling a friend who their parent just got on statins, and I told them that, and they were like, and they told their parent, well, oh no, doctor didn't tell me that, right? So what I'm saying is, a lot of people aren't telling their patients that. And if you're not taking it, it's gonna basically just exhaust your body, like fatigue, muscle weakness, pain, and ironically, it can eventually lead to heart failure. And you can go look at studies of people on statins who had heart failure because their body couldn't function optimally, right? You're like robbing your mitochondria, the little energizer bunnies in your cells of their ability to do their job, right? So your cells just stop performing optimally. They slow down, the function of your cells slow down, which means the function of your entire body is going to slow down. So you have to take CoQ10. And that's really, I think, a big red flag for statins in general. Like you're literally taking, I mean, it's just like a lot of right? This is a rabbit hole we could go down and talk about all day with pharmaceutical drugs, but you're taking one drug for one problem that's causing another problem. Like what is this, right? This is not good. Other side effects, muscle pain and weakness. And again, that's because I think a big part of it is just because how it's affecting your cells and your heart's ability to really do its job optimally. Increased risk of nerve damage, dizziness, cognitive impairment, memory loss, depression, decreased immunity. That's a big one. It actually increase your risk of developing cancer and increased risk of liver problems and the potential risk of increased liver enzymes, which those should be monitored pretty much forever if you're on a statin. and reduce levels of steroid hormones. So think of, DHEA, cortisol, right? All of those steroidal hormones are going to be reduced because of this. So the other thing I want to say too, for a statin, even if you're on a statin, you're not home free. Like, you still have risk of inflammatory response. So it's not like you get on the statin, you're like, oh, I'm just going to eat whatever the heck I want from here on out. Like, it doesn't work like that because I already told you it's making it impossible for your body to produce CoQ10. So now your cells aren't functioning optimally. Your body, your entire body isn't functioning optimally. And it hasn't addressed the problem, right? The problem was your inflammation. That was the problem that caused your increased blood cholesterol levels, was the inflammation. So if you haven't addressed that, then yeah, it's you're not home free. And then really and truly, you're just adding a whole bunch of other symptoms. And I'm not saying all this to guilt anyone if you're on a statin or you have family members on statin. I'm not saying this to like guilt or shame anyone into anything and to not do anything. I want you to know the facts. I want you to know what's actually happening when you're on drugs like this, what's actually the real reason that we're getting on these, right? That they're being prescribed so much. And I mean, honestly, if you think about it, statins are one of the most prescribed drugs in at least the United States. I'm sure in the Western world, I'm sure we can say that across the board, but at least the United States, one of the most prescribed drugs. It's like that when the thyroid medication, I forget what the other one is. But if you think about it, okay, if what I'm saying is true, which it is, because you can look at the studies I'm going to post in the show notes, that elevated cholesterol is caused by inflammation. Think about the standard American diet, right? If you put all the puzzle pieces together, the standard American diet is basically the high inflammation diet, right? That's what it is. It's causing inflammation. It's a bunch of really poor quality fat and sugar and carbs and refine this and refine that, stripped of all nutritional, value. And that's the standard American diet. So yeah, the majority of Americans are walking around as huge balls of inflammation. Of course, their cholesterol is going to be high. You see what I'm saying? So let's talk about what the treatment plan looks like, right? What does the treatment look like to get your cholesterol back to normal? Now, you might have heard of a supplement called red rice yeast, and that can be taken. If you're taking that, it's not something you wanna take forever. And if you have a sensitivity to yeast, if you have, a tendency to get things like yeast infections or high candida, things like that, then because it is a yeast, so you don't wanna add that into your body. If you are taking it, I would say it's like a short-term kinda helping thing. It's not something you wanna just take forever indefinitely because then we go back to the whole pill for an ill thing, right? Then you're taking a pill forever for some, right? I'm not on board with that. So yes, I just want to say that right out of the gate. You could take red rice yeast for a little while if you don't have any of those other things. But I will say the other thing too, it can cause some bloating and gastrointestinal issues. So if you have a sensitive stomach, you just, beware. Just, you know, go with caution. The big things to do. Think, okay, I said that elevated blood cholesterol is caused by inflammation. So then what do? We lower inflammation, right? How do we do that? An anti-inflammatory diet. Let's get rid of the big inflammatory things, right? The big inflammatory things like sugar, things like alcohol, right? Things like gluten for a lot of people, gluten and dairy. And even if this isn't forever, I'm not saying everybody should be off gluten and dairy forever for the rest of their life. But when you're healing, when you're going through a healing process, which I tell my clients, we're going through a healing protocol, these are things we're getting rid of right now. Not saying you can't add them back in, but right now we're getting rid of it. Sugar, alcohol, gluten, dairy, right? We're going to get rid of those right out of the gate. We're going to add in anti-inflammatory things. We're going to add in a lot of colorful fruits and veggies. We're going to add in a lot of fiber, nuts, seeds, good quality fat, like organic extra virgin olive oil, right? Things like organic avocado oil, right? Those good healthy fats, avocados, nuts, seeds. I already said that. Nuts and seeds, those are really good. Eggs, please. You don't have to give up your eggs if you have high cholesterol. That's not what's causing your high cholesterol. You can keep eating your eggs. Limiting your exposure to toxins, right? Go through your medicine cabinet, I mean, do that too. What am I trying to say? Go through your bathroom, your personal care products. Maybe it's in your medicine cabinet. Maybe it's not, but go through your personal care products, right? Clean out things, avoid toxins as much as possible, right? Get rid of your plastics, exercise, sleep, deep breathing. Deep breathing is actually really helpful for inflammation because you help rejuvenate that oxygen flow in your body, which is really good for healthy cells, really good for cellular function. Nature walks, getting outside, getting vitamin D, getting in the woods. I just posted something a couple weeks ago on my stories. This study came out that talked about how forest bathing can actually lower your risk of inflammation and cancer because it helps it boosts the parts of your cells that help boost your immunity. And basically, forest bathing is just going out in nature, right? So it could be a nature walk, just being around nature, trees, grass, vegetation, all of that is really helpful for inflammation. Like your body on a cellular level actually responds to you being out in nature, being around trees and vegetation, grass, all of that stuff, right? And again, helping your cells out. So doing things to like taking a good supplement for mitochondrial health. If you want to know what that is, just shoot me a message on Instagram or on Facebook or shoot me an email, hope at hopefulandwholesome.com. I can give you I actually have a whole, um, like a mitochondrial health protocol that I can give you actually. And it's just a supplement protocol to help boost the function of your mitochondria because that's going to help too. It's going to, when you're boosting your cellular function, it's that's what's been depleted, right? Again, it's from the inflammation. Inflammation is just kind of diminishing the overall function in the body. So you want to help boost that back up. So things like CoQ10, which I was saying to take if you are in a statin, but CoQ10 can help boost cellular function, just period. I think that's one of those that really, as we get older, we should all be taking just anyway, just because it's helping with cellular function. And then also, I would say too, addressing any coexisting chronic inflammatory conditions, right? So things like diabetes, leaky gut, if you have autoimmunity things going on, right? Addressing those things. If you have maybe getting, labs done to see if you have parasites, that kind of thing. And chances are, if you're dealing with high cholesterol, you probably have something going on in your gut. So parasites are probably a good thing to check for. And then, of course, addressing your stress. So I mentioned that chronically elevated cortisol and blood sugar levels are two really big stressors on the body. So address those things, right? Where is your elevated cortisol coming from? Let's address it. And that's a big one. And again, I know I've said this before. This is not like the sexy thing we want to talk about, like address your stress. But, that's what it is, right? Every chronic disease, that's what it's coming from. It's coming from stress. So we need to figure out where the source of that stress is, right? Is it a job? Is it a relationship? Is it toxic thoughts, right? Are there things that you need to address inside your own self? Are there emotions and trauma that you're holding on to? Like, where are those things coming from? Address those, right? This is the treatment plan. Y'all, maybe it wasn't the exciting thing that you thought I was going to talk about in this, and you're like, well, that's lame. But this is the truth. This is the truth that I'm telling you. It's really addressing the inflammation, stressing inflammation. If you think you're doing all the things, then there's something you've missed, right? You think you've done all the things, you're like, why is this happening? There's something you missed. So if you've done the supplements, you've done the diet, and you've done the whole thing, I would say the pieces you're missing are probably those internal things, right? Are there emotions or trauma that you're holding on to that's causing inflammation in the body? Let's address that. If you've done those pieces, right? You've done the address the trauma emotions part and you still feel like you're missing, then it's probably the physical, right? Let's look at the diet, your sleep, your exercise, we need to get outside more. Like what other things can we add? So it's just putting all of the pieces together using intentional supplementation as a part of it. Again, I don't want it to be a whole, pill for an ill thing, replacing one thing and putting it with something else because that defeats the purpose. But there is intentional supplementation where you're using supplements as a part of a healing protocol. And yes, I do think there is, there are maintenance supplements that I tell all my clients to do. And oh, I forgot to say this one too. Omegas, like take your fish oil, your omegas. That's a huge one for inflammation. And, there's this article I was reading, this doctor, and he was on a podcast. I can't remember which podcast he was on. He himself has done, like, I don't know, I wanna say it's close to 100, maybe over 100 studies he himself on fish oil and omegas, omega-3 fatty acids. Anyway, he was talking about how crucial this is for inflammation in the body and brain function and all these things. So I forgot to mention that, but that's an ongoing one. That's like a maintenance one. I would tell every person on the face of the planet should be taking your fish oil or your omega-3s, like whatever form you wanna take. You would take it in the form of algae, that's fine, but getting a good quality omega supplement, and so definitely add that in if you're not doing that and you're working on your cholesterol levels. So I hope this clears up things for you. I hope that this makes more sense and hopefully give you some answers too, because I know it can be frustrating too when you're like, why is my cholesterol? How can I get so just knowing the facts that No, your cholesterol is not elevated because you're eating too many eggs. And there are other reasons that it's elevated, and it's really that's gonna be the key. So if you're wanting to avoid statins or even get off statins, because no, that's the other thing too, that they tell you, like, once you get on statins, you can never get off, but I don't believe that's ever the case. So I do think that there is a point where you can heal your body into a place where you can get off medication. So if you're wanting to get off statins or avoid statins, then do this. If you wanna talk more, shoot me a message. I announced this last week, but I have a broadcast channel on my Instagram page now. So y'all go join it. And this is a great place to ask questions. I'm going to do like Q&As and ask me anything type things all the time there and that. And so this is a good place to get additional questions answered. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. And I will say, I found out because someone messaged me and showed me apparently Instagram likes to do things for some people and not let everybody join the party, which is really annoying. And so there are some people's Instagram accounts that don't have access to broadcast channels, which I find really unfortunate and annoying. But hopefully it'll be across the board soon. But for those of you who do have access to the broadcast channels, I'll put a link to it in the show notes, but you can just go to my Instagram page. Even if you don't have Instagram, make you a dummy account. You don't have to show your name or picture or anything. Make a dummy account, just get in there. So at least you can learn and ask questions and, have access to that community there. So if you have questions on this about cholesterol, anything I talked about today, feel free to shoot me a message, jump into the broadcast channel, ask more questions, share this with a family member or a friend, or, take this protocol with them and help them to help, get their cholesterol levels down. You are your own healer. All of us, we are our own healers. We have everything we need to heal our bodies. And I've just shared another piece of the puzzle here for you. So I hope this helps, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Hopeful and Wholesome, y'all. If you found value in this week's episode, please subscribe on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcast and leave a review to let me know what you thought. I'd love to know what you find useful in these episodes so I can know how to provide the most value I can to my listeners. And if you have topics you'd like to know more about, I'd love to hear those as well. So shoot me a message on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. It's at TheHopePedraza, or you can visit my website, hopefulandwholesome.com. Thanks, y'all.